Again, if you are just joining the Congress on the line, this is the Indigenous Congress 2022. We are honored to have the Honorable Senator Mary Jane McCallum for the second year in a row, and we are hoping for the third year too. I may as well plan that for 2023.
You know what I said to Anna? Because I only have 5 more years left. I said, we should stay with them for the next 5 years, till I'm done, and just see the progress, right, of our conversation and where we are.
Oh, my.
Yeah.
We are so honored. That is so exciting. Thank you so much. Let me, from her response, I know there are executives on the line and EDI. We all have this fancy name, Executive Director, EDI, Social Justice. Senator said it best. Your biggest strategy is to say hello to your employees, is to say hello to one another, right? Yeah. So before we go ahead and say, what's the strategy? The question is, are you kind to your fellow employee, whether they are white, black, male, female, gay, straight, Muslim, pagan, Hindu? Are you kind? Do you look at, when people say, how are you? Do you say, how are you back? Do you look in people's eyes? Right? We forget the basics. We want to create this 3 to 5 year strategy and change everything, and we don't even say hello. Somebody once said that we have been to the moon and back multiple times, but we have not crossed the street to say hello to our neighbor. So thank you, Senator, for highlighting that. The last person I want to bring on quickly to ask the final question. Certainly we have a lot, but now we are going to have you for many more years. So we're going to save some questions for the next year. But I'm going to invite Chrissy Baines, who is a strong ally and advocate for Indigenous education and enlightenment, continue to do lots of work out from Vancouver, British Columbia, educating her kids all the time. I see it, buying them books, always posting it on Instagram, and they are all reading books about Indigenous people and Black people. So, Chrissy, you are more than just a director at the Congress. You are certainly an ally and advocate for social justice. It's with pleasure I bring you in front of the Honorable Senator Mary Jane McCallum to ask the final question on behalf of the Canadian Congress at the Indigenous Congress 2022. Please go ahead, Chrissy Baines.
Thank you. First, I just want to appreciate the wealth of knowledge that you share. Sharing your story and all the survivors who've shared their story to support the Truth and Reconciliation Report. Something that's always on my mind as a settler, someone of European descent, is how many more stories do Canadians need to hear before we take action? The stories are there. People are reliving the trauma to try to educate and inform people of the struggles. And I think something that you said today really resounded with me on the critical thinking, because I think there's a lot of people who just think, but just try harder. Someone in your position, well, she did it, everyone else should just be able to do it. And I hope that people listening will hear the privilege of that statement, of just being able to, pull yourself up when they don't understand what it's like to have your voice silenced and who you are diminished and stolen, and your language stolen, and your family stolen. So I think people who are listening can we just get over it? When's it going to be over? Because I hear this in non-Indigenous communities. And so what you said today really struck me in terms of that has been stolen. Your voice and the critical thinking. I think about how I raise my own kids. Curiosity, you said, creativity, boldness. If that is encouraged in you your whole life, of I see how special you are, let's celebrate your gifts. What are you interested in? Let's do that. Versus being told you're a sinner and to only speak when spoken to. What I'm really hearing, the more that people can deeply connect to the stories that people have been gracious enough to share, I think that's how people can start to learn. I'm thinking, reflecting on what you said last year that broke our hearts. I was crying quite openly at your story. And I just think, how can people hear this and not care more deeply? And so I think, I'm not even sure I have a question for you. I wanted to reflect back on my learnings in hearing you. Was my challenge to people listening is, how can you more deeply connect with Indigenous people and culture and deepen your understanding and empathy? Because the stories are here. the people have been speaking for many, many years, and we're only just starting to listen. So if last year we were listening, this year, how can we deepen our understanding and be more deeply connected and in relationship with Indigenous people? So that's not a question for you. I think that's more of a call for other people who are watching and thinking, what can I do? And it's really, how can you be more deeply connected? And that when you talked about sort of an us versus them, how do we, it's all of us. It's all of our, this is our entire community. So if I did have one question for you, is really, I try and I speak with my kids with as much with honesty, but with as much information as I think they can handle. Last year I did, I'm from the Okanagan. I was actually born in Kamloops and raised in Vernon. And so I was aware of Kamloops Residential School. It closed in 1978 and it was operating as a day school. And so last July I took my kids and we visited, and I really thought hard about, you know, is it appropriate for me to go? I don't want to go as a spectator. I want to be respectful. They had also just had the fires nearby. So they were actually operating as a support hub. Anyways, I brought my kids and cried openly with them. And all I needed to say to them was, kids were taken from their homes, away from their parents. And that was enough for my kids to understand they didn't get to go home for Christmas. And I started to cry, and the kids said, why are you crying? And I said, imagine you didn't get to come home to me as a 5-year-old. So they understood it. And then I said, and some kids didn't come home at all. And my kids were 5 and 7 at that age, and they understood it. Then they walked past the elementary school that's there, and there was a little orange shirt, 215 little orange shirts. And the girls said, what are those? And I said, those represent every kid that didn't get to go home. So at age 5 and 7, I was trying to find ways to educate them. So I'm wondering if you have advice for people who are also wondering, how do I have this conversation with my kids, who for most of us, you know, the kids are not going to school on Friday, on September 30th. How do you have a conversation about Orange Shirt Day, residential schools with young children? I'm wondering if you have advice.
I think what you did was the way to do it, you know, to have that conversation with them and explain why, and explain the concept of stolen. You know, when something is stolen from you, how do we take it back? Because you know how you said, and I'm diverging from your question, you know, people are saying, when is it going to be over? Well, I don't even know what has been stolen from me fully, right? And I think we need to be really careful with the words that we use when we speak. And I'm not at this point speaking about children. I think for people, a lot of people, they don't understand that equity, diversity, and inclusion. And they don't understand that our equality was stolen, and it's gotten to the, you know, it's more than equality, so it's inequity. And really, when you talk, okay, we're going to practice equity, what does that mean? Equity is not a passive action. And it is a concerted effort to say, there are two people here. One is a white male and the other one is a woman of color. They both have the same credentials. They're both capable of doing this job. That the man needs to remove himself and say, we're going to practice equity here, right? Mm-hmm. But just because you say that, you know, and the reason that I'm bringing this up is that people need to challenge themselves and not use words so fleetingly. And then, you know, that diversity and that inclusion, because if you don't have practice equity, there will be no inclusion. And those are three words really concern me because it's all over the place, and now it's just become words, and it's going to leave people behind again. So when I look at, people I think that are unable to speak to certain historical events that there's some unpacking of privilege or unpacking of, there has to be a concerted effort to really understand the breadth and depth of that action that happened. And so when you then speak to how then can you speak to your children, right? Mm-hmm. So, but the way you did it, the way you took your children there, was the right way to do it. And I see people bring their children when I go to different events, and that inclusion of children in an event that is not happy is a big step to take, because we want to shield our children sometimes from this bad world, and shielding them isn't going to protect them. It's not going to do anything for them except for knowledge that could have been given to them to go underground once again, and then we still stay with a gap there. So I maybe that's one area where where we can have further conversation. But I've had conversations with grade 5s, grade 4s, and they've understood it. Mm-hmm. And where is it that little bit of support, not support, but understanding, just starting to make them understand where does it start. And I think what you've done is a very good place to start. If they took me from residential school at the age of 5 and started this, I had no understanding of what was happening, where I was going, what was going to happen to me, and now to go back and realize what a terrible situation that was. I forgave it for many, many years. I thought, oh, it was only 11 years. Oh, this only happened, and I'm okay. And then it took so much out of me. So if, I know I'm rambling, but I want to thank you for what you have done and the support you have given. And I just want to say that when I hear that, I have so much hope. That's why I have hope. So thank you for that, all of you.
Thank you. And I know someone else had said to me, it's a privilege to teach your children about racism rather than them experience it. My daughters are biracial. So a year ago, my younger daughter, who has brown skin, was told, actually her sister with lighter skin was told, your sister has the wrong color skin to be here. She needs to be like this. So this is happening. This is still happening. And so if I have to have that conversation with my children because they're experiencing it, all the other parents can have a safe conversation and raise awareness with their own children so that we can be better humans and better community members and better understand the people that are in our community. So thank you so much for continually sharing your voice and your story for those that haven't yet found their voice. So thank you so much.
Okay, thank you.
Yes,
and I want to thank you for really looking at being left behind, and about generational wealth, because generational wealth comes from addressing being left behind. And I hadn't thought of it in that context. So it really made me, this was something I had not, I said the words, but hadn't really deeply thought about. So you've done so much for me to grow this morning. So I want to thank you for that too. All of
Yes.
you. Okay.
Yes. So but we're still going to give you a few minutes to just say any other thing you want to say. But let me, while we're having this conversation, I remembered reading something about Martin Luther King, and it says 4 days before he died, before he was murdered, rather, Martin Luther King delivered a Sunday sermon. He was a pastor preaching, and he titled that message, "Remaining Awake Through a Great Revolution," which I still believe we are in a great revolution. Yeah. And he preached about the nation's responsibility to address poverty among all colored people. Now, but the lack of support, it was not necessarily prejudice against the poor, but the program the government created was giving lands to the poor white people, created schools to train white people to be better farmers. And there was all these things that were done for the white people who were also in the same situation like the Black people. However, nothing was done for the Black people. And then Martin Luther King said a quotation, which I'm about to say. And right after this, I'll pass it to you, Senator, to give just your final words, freestyle, whatever comes to your heart to give. Martin Luther King said, "It is all right to tell a man to lift himself by his own bootstraps." He said, "but it is cruel jest to say to a bootless man that he ought to lift himself by his own bootstrap." You're saying they should lift themselves up. You should lift yourself with your own bootstrap. You say, but what do you say to the person that doesn't even have a boot? How do that person lift themselves? You have equipped the white Europeans who came to this nation. You've given them loans. You've given them land. You've taken lands from the indigenous and given to them. You've set them on an advantage that perhaps the indigenous may never catch up with. That's what this message is saying. You've set them on an advantage. You know, we talk about white privilege. That's an understatement. The privilege means it's something you can, okay, let's reverse it. This is not just privilege. It's an advantage that is unparalleled. I call it a chasm. A chasm. That means we are in planet Earth. There are maybe other things in Jupiter. From here to that place is near impossible. I know Elon Musk is thinking of going there, but near impossible. So how do you, say, they should, yes, it's over. They should wake up. They should catch up. They should rise up. They should fight up. Yes, Senator can do it. Every other person can do it. No, I'm speaking to everybody on this call, and certainly those who will be watching this after the fact on social media. Again, we are rounding up our critical conversation with the Honorable Senator Mary Jane McCallum. Really woke us up this morning at this Congress, and hopefully has empowered you in your organization to go back. And before you do all those 5-10 year strategy, just love your people, be compassionate, ask how you're doing. And also she talked about, we need to take this to the dinner table. We take politics and religion to the dinner table. We may as well take social justice also to the dinner table. Senator, please give us your last words, advice, anything you want to say as we offer you the last word in this conversation. We are so honored to have you back at the Congress. And you are officially, whether you know it or not, officially a congresswoman at the Canadian Congress. I know you are a senator at the parliament in Canada, but we have our own Congress here. We created the Congress because we feel that the parliament in Ottawa, they need some form of social justice arm. We are not official. People sometimes confuse us to be part of the government because we carry the title Canadian Congress. We are not. I want to just make that clear. But certainly we are here to hold them accountable. We are here to challenge them where necessary, and here to also support where the opportunity exists. So we thank the Senator for being here. Please, over to you for your last word, Senator.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for that. I was thinking about what has driven me over these years to do the work that I do. And it does come down to the Creator, spirituality, and the elders. And And, you know, when we go through adversity, I can't remember who said this, it is not the wound that matters, it is the healing that you go through from the wound that has been inflicted. And as you go through that healing, it's the personal growth and spiritual growth that occurs within you that matters. And, you know, there's, at one time I was very discouraged. I was looking at, it was a matter of justice for me because I had been attacked, I guess, by two health professionals. And I took it, you know, to the region. I took it to Parliament Hill, and nothing was done. And I finally took it to the professional association to deal with them. And I remember being discouraged. And a friend of mine sent me a message. He said, never be discouraged. If you are, you believe then that you have a higher power than God or the Creator. And I realized the truth of that. And I thought, when I was done, I could do no more. I remember standing at the window, and I realized what letting go meant, that there was no use me hanging on to this negative experience and not getting what I thought was justice. And I just stood at the window and I just said, Creator, I'm giving it to you. And just the freedom that came with that experience. And the last one is I met an elder and she said, you know, when you meet, like we met this morning, she said, no meeting is by chance. Everything happens for a reason. Either people are there to listen to what you have to say, or you are there to learn from them. And, or they have a behavior that you know you don't want to emulate, or they have a behavior like integrity that you want to follow. She said, when you leave, all of you will be changed people. So for the people that are here with me this morning, and you know, with your thoughtful questions and comments, we are all different because we have learned from each other. And I want to thank you for that. And that's what she said, thank them for the growth you have experienced in the short time you have been together. So I want to acknowledge that I learn. I'm always a student, and that when I go into Senate, it isn't the individual Mary Jane that stands there and does the speeches. It's the collective Mary Jane who has been shaped by people across Canada and continually gets shaped to do what needs to be done. So I want to thank you as well, all of you, for helping my growth this morning. Okay?
Thank you so much, Senator Jen McCallum.
Henry, you are muted.
Senator Jen McCallum, thank you from the bottom of our hearts. Thank you for sharing wisdom. Thank you for sharing understanding. This note is to officially say, we at the Canadian Congress on Inclusive Diversity and Workplace Equity take this moment to say we are honored, we are deeply gratified, we are humbled for sharing those wonderful words here at the Indigenous Congress 2022. As earlier on mentioned, you are now, as always, a congresswoman. In addition to being a senator, in addition to being a leader, an elder, you are part of the Canadian Congress. Please know that we are here. We work alongside you and the people you work with to make this world a little bit better. We are intentional, like you mentioned. We are respectful, but also we learn every day. Thank you again from the Canadian Congress, and we wish you greatness and inner peace. Thank you.
Thank you.